Today it's my great pleasure to introduce legendary radio announcer Tony Pilkington. Tony is a much-loved, long-serving Rotarian and a valued part of the Rotary Club of Adelaide's history. That makes him sound old. Well, he is. He's 75. Tony has not one, not two, but 3 Paul Harris Fellows, recognising his service to the community, and has been recognised with an Order of Australia for his community service as well. Those of us who know Tony Pilkington, or Pilko as we call him, well, know him as a selfless, kind and thoughtful person, as well as being a real fun guy. For 20 plus years, Tony was the patron of the Childhood Council of South Australia, and he's been a valued member of the Salvation Army's advisory board here in South Australia, injecting humour and fun into their serious work. Tony tells me that his proudest achievement in life is being the founding member of the Central District Football Club cheer squad. He also says he's been sacked more times than Sam Dastiari, and he is considering using his experience to start a new business advising sacked AFL coaches on how to cope. I think there might be a bit of truth in that bit of humour. For the last 5 years, Tony has been Sergeant-at-Arms at the ageing Rotary Club of Brisbane, where he's been living with his wife Anne. Today he's here to talk to us on the topic of perceptions of Adelaide and Rotary, then and now. Please welcome Tony Pilkington.
Rotarians and guests, past President, past District Governor, he assures me he's not past it. David, thank you for the generous introduction. To President Heidi, I thank her for the invitation to be your guest speaker today, on the clear understanding that her first 2 choices were unavailable, and she would like me to assure you that His Excellency the Governor and Professor Nicholas Spurrier will certainly be in attendance between now and the end of the year. I've never been the first choice anyway. When I first was asked to join the Rotary Club of Adelaide in the early 90s, it was by the wonderful and late Max Hall. He was sitting outside the Burnside Shopping Centre, surrounded by women's stockings. And I was a little perplexed and a little surprised. I thought, well, if that's his hobby, fair enough. Not realising until Bob Haswell told me, 4-eyed gig, that's what he does for a living. He is, in fact, a distributor, a major distributor for hosiery. When I joined the club, there were very definite conditions. 60% attendance was expected and was generally adhered to. The gentlemen were expected to wear a jacket and tie. And as for lady members, from memory we had no more than 3 or 4. The late Kemry Murray, Bev Fairweather, Madeline Wiesner, and I can't remember who else. The guest speakers were always expected to be of a particular persuasion, always male, and never to be controversial. You can imagine when I joined the Speakers Committee why I only lasted for 7 weeks. My first invitation was to Bob Francis. It went over like a fart in a lift, I got to tell you. I said, Bob, we wanted you to be non-controversial. They said, you can have another try. I then invited Robin Archer. Wonderful performer, not much of a guest speaker. I thought, we'll rescue this. This is not the end of the world. I'll invite a politician. I invited the then Labor Treasurer, Tom Koutsantonis, to address us. The late Arthur Walker came along with a bag full of stale bread rolls to throw at him. Then I invited Peter Gers. In attendance that day, Eric and Joan Neal. Peter Gers got up and told the story of how he loved visiting country hotels. Didn't mind if they didn't have an ensuite because they always had a basin, and it came in wonderfully handy. One didn't need much imagination to know what he was talking about. I looked at Kemry Murray and she wasn't pleased. Hoping to goodness I didn't go into the family law court on a divorce matter. I'd have lost the lot. Lady Joan looked at me and went, I thought, oh God, Lady Joan's not happy either. And she said, Pilko, that story that Peter told about the hand basins in the country hotels brought back some wonderful memories. Oh, really, Lady Joan? Her husband was standing alongside her at the time, Sir Eric, and she said, yes, I've caught somebody actually using that for a purpose other than washing their hands. What a sigh of relief. She enjoyed the story from years ago. We need to change, but the changes need to be made with the cooperation and the adherence of all of us. We've changed dramatically over the years. This club, for example, for the last umpteen number of weeks, you've successfully conducted your meetings online. What a breakthrough. The way of the future. The lack of personal commitment among young people, and I've got sons that I've tried to get to join Rotary, and they've said, Dad, we can't afford to give up 2 hours of a Monday, always a busy day, and in the case of the Brisbane Rotary Club, pay $45 for a one-course meal with no guest speakers. Sadly, we have 28 active members and no more than about 9 or 10. On Monday of last week, 6 people turned up at the luncheon. And when, as a new member, I suggested we amalgamate with the club downstairs that meets on a Friday, that didn't go down well at all because they have their anniversary, their 100th anniversary coming up. And they want to be the same club, the Rotary Club of Brisbane, not amalgamated with anybody, to celebrate that centenary. I understand that, but changes need to be made, and those changes we all need to accept and go along with if we are to attract younger people to join Rotary. It is a wonderful organisation. Paul Harris would have been among the first to say the changes are necessary. Somebody said, where does the name Rotary come from? Had no idea in the world. The name Rotary, when Paul Harris founded it in Chicago in 1905, there were 6 of them. And they actually rotated in their various offices as to where the meetings were held, because they couldn't hold a meeting in the same office 2 consecutive weeks. So hence the name Rotary. They simply rotated around. The changes, I really can't say what the changes need to be. But we need to attract younger people. We need to perhaps have, unlike today, good guest speakers that interest those younger people, and not necessarily guest speakers who are simply flogging a cause or a charity or indeed a particular line of business. And let's never ever forget that in order to attract young people, we say this is an opportunity for you to actually interact and talk about the business you operate and look for expanding your business. We are the founding club of the Rotary Club of Shanghai, I believe. And wow, that's all about business. But I'm pleased to say that there are now quite a few lady members of the Rotary Club of Shanghai. Believe it or not, in Switzerland, there are very few lady members of Rotary. You go to a couple of clubs and you say, the Sheilas couldn't turn up. They don't know what you're talking about. The ladies couldn't be here today. Oh, we don't have any lady members. Now, this is Switzerland, supposedly one of the most progressive countries in the world. But believe it or not, very few lady members of Rotary, which is a great shame. Somebody said to me, why are you working back in Adelaide? It's to do with the stock exchange. And somebody said, at 75, how come you got the job? You're old, you're past it, you has-been. When it was discussed at very high levels, keeping in mind that 5AA and Nova owned by a young bloke, a 42-year-old by the name of Lachlan Murdoch. And the overall denominator in that organisation is one Rupert Murdoch. When the discussion came up, somebody said, the chairman will be 90 in March of next year. I wouldn't allude to the fact that Pilko is 75 and probably too old for the job. It won't go down well. And somebody said, not only that, he happens to know the chairman. Not that they're friends, far from it, but it was also put to me, what do you do on your program? How do you ever get people to be interested in it? An afternoon program, a nothing program, 12:30 in the afternoon till 3 o'clock? Nobody's listening. That's not true. The last survey we had close on 30 people listening on a regular basis. And if you want to boost the numbers up to 50, there are some very easy topics to introduce. Can I give you a list of them? Let's change to Eastern Standard Time. Do they get their knickers in a knot about that? But there's a couple of better ones than that. If that doesn't work, the reintroduction of capital punishment. I wouldn't hang for parking offences. I've mellowed somewhat. But ever since Bob Francis died, he wanted to have hangings every first Friday down at Victoria Square. What an attention getter. You'd have the world coverage of that. The other one is, of course, is the abolition of the upper house. That works a treat. Frank Pangallo drives his car off the road every time he hears that one. That really gets him going. The other one is, what about we become a republic? That never fails either. Switchboard lights up. There's another couple, increasing the driving age to 18. That actually gets a lot of support, believe it or not. There's another couple too that never seem to fail, but they're the ones moving to Eastern Standard Time, the reintroduction of capital punishment, the abolition of the upper house, becoming a republic, and increasing the driving age. In a career that's gone on for too long, it's not really a career. I couldn't mention it when Jane was here last week, but people in radio and television, it's not a real job. And there's a lot of them who think it is. No, seriously, a lot of them think it's a real job. It's usually singers who can't sing, dancers who can't dance, actors who can't act, and writers who can't write. What do? They go into radio. That's what they do. Over the years, one of the questions occasionally asked is, who is the most interesting person you've ever met or interviewed? There have been a few. One time with Keith Conlon, back in the early 2000s, 2002 or 3, our secretary, they're now called personal assistants, came in and said, there's an overseas telephone call claiming to be from Rio de Janeiro and a man by the name of Ronnie Biggs. Have you heard of him? Said, haven't met him, but we've heard of him. Sally, are you sure? She said, it's definitely an overseas call and it is from South America somewhere. Put him on the line. On he came. Immediately you knew it was Ronnie Biggs. And he said, we haven't met, but he said, I'm wondering if you'd do me a favour. And we thought, he's going to tell us where he's hidden some of the money. He said, would you be kind enough on your wireless show? Wireless? Well, yeah, why not? To send a birthday call to my daughter. I don't want to mention her surname. I'll mention her Christian name. And I think she's still living in Adelaide, and I'll mention the name of her first dog, so she'll know that it's a genuine. We said, Ronnie, you have a daughter in Adelaide? He said, yes. He mentioned how old she was. He mentioned her name and the name of her first dog. And we said, will you come on the... He said, no, I don't want to say any more. We said, where are you living? What's the address? He said, I'm in Rio de Janeiro. Everybody knows that. Mentioned the name of the daughter and the first dog and said, it's her birthday. I send her all of my love. We would then send people, when they went to Rio de Janeiro, to give him we gave him his telephone number. I know that Max Harris, some of you would know Max. Went across, phoned the number, Ronnie Biggs came down, met them in the bar. They posed, took photos. All they had to do was give Ronnie some money and buy him a few drinks. And he fondly talked about the time that he lived in Adelaide, worked at Channel 9 as a carpenter, worked down at Glenelg as an odd bodsman, and we subsequently found out that the daughter, in fact, now lives in Darwin. So didn't actually hear the call, but somebody was able to pass it on to her. Somebody said, "Who else have you been fortunate enough to have spoken to over the years?" We got a telephone number for Idi Amin. That call lasted about 1:40. The President wanted to know if we were the King or the Prime Minister. When we told him who we were, he seemed to lose interest. Barry and I, years ago, did the only ever interview that Ethel Kennedy has ever given. We drove to Hyannisport, drove up there, incredible security, the big compound at Cape Cod up there. And then her secretary came out, introduced herself and said, "Mrs. Kennedy will be joining you in a moment." Bazz and Pilko, close enough. She had a list of questions that could not be asked. Nothing about the assassinations, nothing about politics, nothing about the family, nothing about what she thought of America in that day and age. So it was nearly a case of, "Good morning, Mrs. Kennedy, thank you for the invitation. I'm sorry we can't stay long." A whole list of questions. A charming lady, thought we were from Austria, had never been to Australia, had no intention of coming here, but, and I don't know, she agreed to do the interview because one of her staff was indeed an Adelaidean. They said, "I've got these two idiot mates who are working in New York at the moment, they'd love to interview you." As a nice gesture, she said yes, but the list of questions that couldn't be asked. Ava Gardner was nearly a fascinating interview. I stupidly said to her, "Miss Gardner, when you were in Melbourne in 1956 making the movie, you suggested that Melbourne was a good place to make a movie about the end of the world." She got ropeable, absolutely ropeable. She fancied Barry, she hated me completely. So the interview died an absolute death. I think the most fascinating character to have come across in 1990, we were working in Moscow for a while. What a disaster that was. But anyway, we said we'd like to interview the mayor of Moscow, one Boris Yeltsin. And it was said to us, "Certainly, we'll try and arrange it. Make sure that you interview the mayor in the morning." Why? Fairly legitimate question. He can sometimes be a little, perhaps not as sharp as he is in the morning and the afternoon. We couldn't get the film crew together. We eventually arrived at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the most palatial office you've ever seen in your whole life. Chandeliers were ushered in with our camera crew, keeping in mind the cameraman had a shoulder camera. And there is Boris dancing. Okay, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, probably a busy morning, bit of relaxation, and he's dancing to Rod Stewart's Sailing. Not a bad song, but oh, what the hell. His first question was, in broken English, "Do you know Rod Stewart?" "No, Mr. Mayor, we don't." "Ah, really? Do you know Steve Irwin?" "Know of him, but no, we don't know him, Mr. Mayor." So we've struck out twice. Boris continued to dance, and the guy with the camera thought, "What do I do? Do I film the idiot dancing or what?" So he keeps filming. Boris eventually stops, has another drink, says, "Would we like one?" "Certainly. We're here to do an interview. We want to be sociable, Mr. Mayor. If that's the prerequisite, more than happy to have a drink with you." Oh, it's like kerosene. Boris then sits down, and somebody must have moved the chair because he fell, just ever so slightly, but he recovered, and the cameraman kept filming it. It was at that stage that a thin-faced, mean-looking son of a gun came across and whacked his hand up against the camera. So the cameraman, bang, cops it. And the guy in a high-pitched voice is saying, "Nath, Nath, Nath," which is Russian for no, no, no. Luckily, I didn't say to the gentleman, "Why don't you jolly off? It's none of your so-and-so business. We're here to speak to the mayor. Get lost." It wasn't until a few days later that in Sydney they informed us the guy was from a close associate of the mayor from St. Petersburg, one Vladimir Putin. I should have told him to watch the name off, but I'd have still been in Moscow doing God knows only what. Some of the famous Rotarians, and there have been so many, Pope Francis, Sylvia Footner, Prince Charles, Madeleine Wiesner, Neil Armstrong, current President Heidi, Presidents Kennedy, Reagan and Bush, the late Kemry Murray, Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, Angela Merkel, the Duke of Edinburgh, and unfortunately Lance Armstrong. Still a Rotarian, believe it or not. As I close, can I just say that the one person none of us have been able to interview, apart from Ray Martin, was a long member of this club, Sir Donald Bradman. Joined the club in 1949. Got to know him over a period of years. I knew him, but I didn't know him. I think, Darcy, you'd know what I'm talking about. You can know Bradman, but not know him. We clashed many times. You didn't clash with Sir Donald. You disagreed with him, but kept it to yourself. At one stage, I've got to wrap it up, my son, 20-year-old son's walking out the door and he turns to me and says, "Oh, Dad, I went to the movies yesterday with a mate of yours." I said, "Yeah, who?" He said, "Don Bradman." I said, wait. What, how could you possibly go to the movies with Don Bradman? He said, "Tom and I took him to the movies yesterday." Tom Bradson, his grandson, his only grandson, had given Don a ring a couple of days before and I said, "Gramps, we want to take you to the movie. It's January or so of 1997. He said, "You'll know a few people who are in it. Come with us." So Donald said, "What's the movie, Tom?" He said, "Titanic." So Donald said, "Pilko," he always listened to ABC Classic FM. I never corrected him. You didn't correct Sir Donald. Pilko was close enough. He said, "Pilko," he said, "I heard them coming, your son and Tom." He said, "And I was surprised. We went to the movies. I thought they all started at 7:30. He said, "We went at 11 o'clock in the morning down to Norwood." He said, I said, "I'll shout you." He said, "They went and got some sweets. I was looking forward to the Fantails and perhaps the Jaffas." He said, "They came back with Red Bull and a bucket of vomit." I said, "What do you mean a bucket of vomit?" He said, "I think it's called popcorn." He said, "When we went in, they said, 'Gramps, we'll get a seat right alongside the aisle because it's a 2-hour movie and we realised that at your age you'll need." He said, "Pilko, I hung on for the whole 2 hours." He said, "It got worse after that." He said, "I volunteered. He said, by the time the movie finished, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon." He said, "I was hungry." He said, "I'd take them to a nice..." They said, "No, Gramps, we'll take you to a terrific restaurant." He said, "There'll be a nice little Italian restaurant." He said, "Pilko, we went up Glenburn Road and pulled into a place. And believe it," he said, "I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Pilko, it was called Faster Pasta." I said, "Sir Donald, a really popular spot." He said, "There's 2 things I hate. No, there's 3 things I hate in life. The chapels, broccoli and pasta." I said, "How did the meal go?" He said, "I looked at the wine list," as thank God it was, he said, "I looked at the wine list," and he said, "They had clean skins on." He said, "I've never heard of the Clean Skin Winery in my life." I said, "I had 1 glass and left it at that." Rotarians and guests, embrace change, enjoy change, knowing that it will ensure that this wonderful organisation that we're so proud to belong to, Rotary, will continue to thrive. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Tony. We have to have some time for questions, and I see Chris Mitchell-Moore has got one over there, so Pilko is still here to answer some questions.
Pilko, lovely to see you again.
Thanks.
and it's my first time back at Rotary for several months, so what better way to come back? This is a question that probably shouldn't be asked. You mentioned that people from the media come from one of four categories: actors who can't act, writers who can't write, singers who can't sing, and the other one. Which one are you?
Unfortunately, Chris, I'm all four. Actors who can't act, singers who can't sing, dancers who can't dance, and writers who can't write. I mean, I see John Hunter is here today. I mean, the wonderful John Hunter. I can remember going over to a function at Port Lincoln, and we had a function at the hotel that Mark Rasciuto was a part owner of, and they picked us up at the airport. I'm in the back there, and Mark said, "How's it going?" And the organiser said, "Oh, most of them are nice, but God, this bloke Hunter, is he hard to handle?" And Roo very quickly piped up and said, "Oh yes, Pilko's a friend of his." In other words, to try and shut the driver up. Always remember that.
Steve Larkins.
Tony, thanks. That's a fantastic address. I tumbled across a story about a man you probably know, Jim Sutton. That probably doesn't mean much to people in the room, but he was obviously a pretty formative figure in your past. Did you want to say a few words about him?
Oh, the late Jim. You notice a lot of my friends are the late. Jim Sutton was a general manager at the time, and he decided to put myself and Barry together on the assumption that he had somebody really good coming at Easter, who was what they call a hot jock and would do all of the right things. He said, between the two of you, he said, one will turn up on time and the other one will be sober. And he said, "You both owe me favours," and we did, without going into the details. Barry and I had both recently been divorced at the time, and we needed help, and he was able to provide it. So yes, Jim Sutton actually put us together, denied it for the first 6 months, and when it had some success after that, he admitted to the fact that he was the one who put Bazz and Pilko together. Yeah.
Thank you. David Seaton.
Pilko, it's incredible, but last night on a channel that I couldn't identify, there was almost an hour program on Putin, and there was a lot about Boris Yeltsin on that program. And yes, he was dancing around his lavish office, and whoever the cameraman was, he did a fantastic job. Perhaps he was your man.
Yes, I mean, at the time in 1990, we were working in Moscow for 2 weeks, Barry and myself, and from Radio Moscow, a program that started at 11 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning, which was 5 to 9 the following morning in Sydney, if you can figure out the time differential. And nobody could figure it out how these two idiots got to go to Radio Moscow and broadcast live for 4 hours every day. The foreign minister at the time was one Gareth Evans. He was really ropeable about it. Why, in a delicate time like this, with the glasnost all to go and Gorbachev battling to hold on to power, would we send two idiots like that across? And nobody could ever figure it out. We know the reason how we got there, and we're never prepared to admit it, but it was 2 weeks in Moscow, and it was sad. To fly from London to Moscow, a 5-hour trip, was like going from 1990 back to about 1964. It was genuinely sad. The then foreign minister was one with the shocking white hair, ended up the president of Georgia. He knew where Australia was. This is the Russian foreign minister. He knew where Australia was. He'd been there. It was near Fiji. That's how important we were.
Don't go. We have time for one last question, I'm afraid. Past President Adriano.
Tony, always wonderful sharing some time with you. Interesting question, but absolutely needed. When are you transferring back to the Rotary Club of Adelaide?
Where am I? Oh, well, I'm still a member of the Rotary Club of Brisbane. We struggle up there. We've got 28 members, 12 active members. And as I said last week at the meeting, I'm told 6 people turned up. But they have, they want to hang on to the fact that they'll celebrate their centenary in a year or so's time. If amalgamation is the way for Rotary clubs to go, to attract the younger members and to take our older members. It's important that our existing members are all inclusive of the changes that we need to make. And I say we as a Rotarian, because it's such a great organisation and so many lifetime friendships are made. But if amalgamation is the way to go, hopefully the Rotary Club of Brisbane will look at that when they celebrate their centenary in a couple of years' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. For those that are interested, Tony, for the last 5 years, has been the sergeant of the Rotary Club of Brisbane, holding them together. They just come along to hear him every week. It's what keeps them together. And Tony, can I just say thank you very much for entertaining us as usual. He did a wonderful job at our district conference last year on the same topic of embracing fun and fellowship in Rotary, which he does so well and we all love. And thank you very much for that. And today you've added in not only the humour but also the importance of change. You've seen it that it's necessary. You've got kids like all of us that see that and this club, you know, we can be proud of ourselves because we have not gone down that path like Brisbane. And it's wonderful to have you come and reflect that back to us and share some of your famous interviews. And I ask the members to stand and appreciate Tony in the normal manner. Thank you.